Are you ever allowed to have like two opinions on something? Like are you allowed to like pancakes and waffles? Are you allowed to agree with everyone? I don't know. I'm gonna attempt to find out in this video because I basically everybody in this entire story is somebody that I find myself agreeing with. And that's a tricky spot to be in. So about a week ago, maybe a little less than a week ago, Didier Deschamps, who's the coach of the French national team, which if you didn't know that, welcome to the show. Didier Deschamps came out and said that he'd received a call. Real Madrid had written to the French Football Federation to inform them that they will not release their players for the Paris Olympics. If you did not know, the Olympics are happening this summer. They're happening in Paris. And as part of the Olympics, there is like a football tournament. It's a weird tournament, right, where it's under 23, but then you're allowed to have 3 over 23 players. So it's an under 23 championship, right, because they decided to do that because they didn't want to compete with the World Cup anymore. I think it was in like the 80s that they decided to make that change, which makes complete sense. The World Cup won the arms race there. But this is just on the men's side as well. The women's side, you can bring all the players you want. So it's an under 23 tournament, but you can bring 3 over 23 players. And certain Olympic men's football tournaments have been amazing. I remember when the Olympics were in Brazil, Neymar won an Olympic gold medal. It was Brazil's first ever Olympic gold medal, and it was like this huge dramatic moment for him. So it can still have awesome moments. It's like a quasi important tournament. Really kind of depends on what players decide that it's an important tournament. But Real Madrid's getting ahead of this initially by just writing to the French Football Federation that their players, a group that will likely include Kylian Mbappe and definitely includes Camavinga and Tchouaméni, that they won't be available for the Olympics. That obviously makes me sad. Like the first thing that I think of when I read this is it makes me sad because you want to be able to watch the best teams at tournaments. But we are also going to have a European Championship this summer. And that's where the other half of this gets really complex and convoluted because Real Madrid is not the only team that is going to look to potentially withhold its players from participating in the Olympics in Paris. For some reason, Real Madrid felt the need to write a letter to the French Football Federation, maybe just because they have a couple of French national team players and they wanted to let them know in advance. But Barcelona has also done this. Barcelona's sporting director, Deco, said that he does not want anybody in the squad to play at the Euros and the Olympics, right? Because that would then mean you're playing the entire summer. And they have, of course, experience with this. They have the Pedri experience with this. If you guys don't remember, Pedri played 73 matches in his first year as a professional because he played the Euros and he played at the Olympics. And poor Pedri, since he did that when he was 18 years old, has had muscle issues ever since. Now, I am not going to pretend to be a doctor. I don't know how potentially linked those two things are. But the fact that, Pedri is this canary in the coal mine of playing as many matches as possible at 18 years old has kind of spooked Barcelona. That makes sense to me. And I understand where Barcelona and Real Madrid are coming from in their need to withhold players from the Olympics because there's a European Championship going on. I mean, Real Madrid had already come out. They came out and said that if a player made at least the quarterfinals in the European Championship, they would be resting. So the Olympics don't actually overlap with the season per se. They overlap with the late preseason, right? We're talking July, a little bit of early August. If you're playing in the Olympic men's football tournament, right? That's what you're going to be. That's what's going to be eaten up. And for Real Madrid, that basically encompasses a tour of the United States, right? They're going on a preseason tour of the United States. And it had already been established that players that made at least the quarterfinals of the Euros would skip that tour. They would not go on the preseason tour because they needed rest. Now, I am a proponent of this rest, right? I understand where they're coming from because this rest is very important, right? I think that a big reason that there's so much of an issue around how many matches players have to play isn't necessarily the number of competitive matches in the season. It's the ridiculous number of unnecessary tours and whatever that make all these clubs tons of money that happens in the preseason, right? Whether that be the fact that Barcelona finished its La Liga season last year, and because they're sucking up every dime that's not nailed down, they just got on the plane that night to fly to Japan to just play more matches, right? Like that sort of stuff is insane. The offseason should be the offseason. They should also get rid of the League Cup, but that's a conversation for another time, right? But the offseason needs to be the offseason. That and things like the Nations League that just soak up every single window of matches that need to be like what the idea of friendlies was great, right? Because nobody watched them and nobody cared, but it allowed national teams to rotate their national pool, right? And you could send somebody like Kylian Mbappe or Pedri home for a week and a half or 2 weeks, and they could recuperate. They could recover. They could have some time off. They could eat, they could eat a Snickers bar and watch some TV, catch up on the latest season of Drive to Survive, whatever they wanted to do, right? But the Olympics and the Euros are both big events. And I understand as a player if you want to participate in those events because those aren't Nations League. Those aren't the League Cup. This isn't a preseason tour of China, Japan, or the United States, right? It's the Olympics, right? And the concern around fixture congestion, great. If you're playing the Olympics, you're playing like 4 matches, right? Maybe if you're France and you get all the way to the final, I think it's 6 matches, right? That's 2 windows of Nations League, right? They're just, hey, boom, easy, got it, done. I mean, Real Madrid on their preseason tour of the United States. Let me see if I can find it here. Real Madrid on the preseason tour of the United States is scheduled to play 3 matches in a week. I mean, that's the same thing that the Olympics is doing, right? So if you play the Euros and say you get knocked out before the quarterfinal, this is what you would have been doing anyways. So and understandably, as this process has gone on, players are now starting to come out and make some noise. Chouameni said, because he's one of the French players that's going to be denied by Real Madrid here. If Real Madrid decides to veto, there's not much to say. He said that on a website called Marca. Don't worry, I learned. The Real Madrid, I want to find the full quote here because it is very telling. He says, it's not, here it is. Okay. Obviously, playing in the Olympic Games in your own country is something extraordinary. It is not something that we can perhaps repeat in our lives. But if Real Madrid is our employer, from the moment Real Madrid decide to veto, then I think we don't have much to say. Besides, everyone knows that it is not necessarily good to disagree with your employer in daily life. It is weird to hear a footballer refer to their club as their employer, and I'm sure it's a kind of distancing language that Real Madrid would not appreciate. But I sympathize with Chouameni here. So now, as we continue this story, I'm now back on the side of the players here. I'm now back with Aurelien Chouameni. I get you. It's a home world, it's a home Olympics, right? You get to walk at the Olympics, you get to wave at everybody, you get to compete for a gold medal in front of a heavily French crowd, a heavily French crowd. I mean, that is, you're checking off childhood dreams as you go along there. And I think part of these types of sentences, Florentino Perez loves to have control, right? And he's very good at what he does. But Florentino Perez is also sensitive to bad PR, particularly when it comes to his collection of star players, of which Aurelien Chouameni is one of those, and he is not the only one. There is, of course, the large question of Kylian Mbappe, that according to the Athletics reporting, literally France's sports ministry and PSG teammates have all been trying to convince Kylian Mbappe to play. And then, hold on. Let me, an anonymous source has said that Kylian Mbappe wants to go, but it's not for sure, right? Because he is, of course, going to be joining Real Madrid. So we've got Aurelien Chouameni, who is already public about the fact that it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, particularly to play at your home Olympics, a la Neymar at the Brazil Olympics, where he, that's one of, I would say, the top 10 at least footballing moments of his career, winning the gold medal, the first gold medal for Brazil at the Olympics ever, and being able to have that forever as a footballing experience for him and his country, right? Aurelien Chouameni has expressed the interest in that, and I totally understand where he's coming from. And then Kylian Mbappe apparently wants to go, right? But it hasn't become a public thing yet. I think if it did become a public thing for Kylian Mbappe, then Florentino Perez might actually unlock the floodgates and let people go if they wanted to. And they're also starting to take some shelling from Thierry Henry, who's the coach of the French youth national team. In case you didn't know, he doesn't spend all of his time hitting on Kate Abdo, right? Foreign clubs don't see the situation the way we do. This is Thierry Henry. So for them, it's a no. But generally, I don't stop at the first no. So Thierry Henry's already publicly speaking out about how he's going to try and, go and visit Florentino Perez and try and kick down the door so we can get the best players in the team. Chouameni's talking about how it's a great possibility. I think this is going to turn into a PR battle, but I understand where both sides are coming from here. I sympathize with Florentino Perez, which is a sentence I've literally never said before, in the concept that you want to try and provide some rest, but I also think that you could just send them on vacation after the Olympics for a week or two. They're going to be in tremendous shape. I mean, that's what they tried to do with Pedri at Barcelona, who I also sympathize with Deco at Barcelona, where you're like, well, we just played this guy 73 matches. Tchouaméni didn't play 73 matches last year. Pedri was a very unique, specific case. And I think if you want to try and cut down on the number of matches that guys are playing, then doing it outside of the Euros, doing it outside of the World Cup, doing it outside of the Olympics is probably the best way to do it, right? Like not probably. That is the best way to do it, because even though the Olympics isn't as big of a deal, it's still, depending on, your individual hope of what you're going to get out of your footballing career, maybe one of the coolest things you ever get to participate in. Aurelien Tchouaméni's clearly already feeling that. Literally, the entire administration of France is trying to force Kylian Mbappe to play in it too. Who knows how he actually feels, because rather wisely, he's probably keeping that close to his vest because he has a lot of stuff going on already. But there is a chance all these guys could end up at the Olympics. But whether they do or not, this is going to be a story, and it's a story with no completely right answer here. But it's a tough look if you're Florentino and Real Madrid and you've got guys talking about, well, my employer says I can't go. That's a tough look. But will I watch the Olympics? Yes, but I am doing it for, what's a good answer to that? Outdoor canoeing. Okay, bye.